Welcome back everyone. Stormclaw has quickly become recognized as one of the best builds to play this season, and for the right reasons. It gets an enormous boost from the Vampiric Powers that Season of Blood provides. The seasonal bosses drop unique items, which increase the chances of acquiring some of the powerful items that help the build excel. And it's just incredibly fun to play. It's often mistaken for being an endgame only build, but it's actually more than viable for all content. There's just some nuances and caveats that you need to understand, and we're going to go through all of them in this video, because this is not a build that you'll simply click the D4 Builds link and get results. You need to know the logic so that you can apply it to your own character. Otherwise, you may end up broken, and nobody wants that. The first topic we'll cover is going to be gear and equipment, and you can see that I've got 3 different gems equipped in the jewelry slots, and this is needed for my particular character, but it might not be needed for yours. And again, there's no place on D4 builds to put information like this, so you need to make sure that you're aware of all these nuances to make your character as successful as possible. Another thing to point out here, this ring has an item level of 686, this one's 677, I've got some pieces here 837, 900, so not completely dependent on being endgame, and I can't stress that enough. You can use this build over a wide span of the content, if not the entire game. The way you cater it and what type of affixes you put on your gear may vary, so it's a matter of understanding how these work. On the helm here, I have nearly 40 shadow resistance, which means if I put this in D4 builds on the helm slot, and you don't get it, you will need to pick this up somewhere else. Because you can see here, I only have 2 resistances at 70, and they're barely over. They're just over. The other resistances are just shy. So there's really no room for flexibility here. You need to have all these resistances covered. The reason this is so important is because we actually use multiple uniques on the build. In the chest slot, Mad Wolf's Glee, which is not required but is very powerful for the build, adding +3 ranks to all werewolf skills. With the uniques, we can't reroll the affixes or choose which ones they have. We're stuck with what they come with. That means that the other remaining slots are even more critical to make sure that we have everything covered. But again, this shadow resistance does not need to be in the helm, it just needs to be somewhere. For the main hand, we're using Great Staff of the Crone, and this is another very powerful item. This one you could consider more being required. You could certainly still level in something like the Domain Tunnels without it. However, this is going to allow you to do all types of content, so keep an eye out for this. Make sure that you keep it or equip it once you have it. Again, there's no plus all stats, with a weapon slot being a great choice for that particular affix because you can roll it so high, and that's going to become a factor when we look at Paragon. And what I've done with the Paragon boards, just to give you a little preview, is arrange them in such a manner that we can take advantage of the bonus property that they have based on what our final stats will be. For a character compared to other very high or nearly max level characters, these are very low main stats, which means that this is also a concern. And again, just stresses how important it is to understand how everything works and make sure that you're setting your character up properly to be as successful as possible. I'm going to quickly scroll through the gear for anybody that's curious, and there's a lot of improvement that can still be made on all of these pieces. Now, the way we're going to be able to do that is re-rolling frequently at the Enchanter or the Oculist. So you're going to want to make sure that you're running Helltide as often as possible. This is going to be one of the main sources for you to improve your character. And that might seem silly, but often re-rolling a piece might be better than actually finding one. And when you do find a piece, it's more than likely that you'll need to re-roll something to make all the other pieces then work again. Wrapping up equipment is going to be Vampiric Powers, and you'll likely need to stamp some slots onto some of your armor pieces in order to get enough packs to use all of the 5 Vampiric Powers you want. And there are really just 5 that I would put here. Hectic, every 5 basic skills you cast, one of your cooldowns is going to be reduced. Incredibly powerful. We're going to be attacking so fast, this will just frequently be proccing over and over. There's no internal cooldown for this ability. Undying, casting skills, which includes your basic skill or claw, will heal you for a percentage of your life. Doubles this bonus while below 50%. Again, we're attacking so fast. Oftentimes, as long as you survive a hit, you will just regenerate your health almost instantly. Super powerful for this build as well. Moonrise, hitting an enemy with basic skill grants you additional attack speed, stacking up to 5 times at maximum stacks. You gain additional basic skill damage and movement speed. Just again, you can see the theme here. Everything is centered around just our basic attack, which is going to be Claw, as well as Storm Strike if we happen to have the Great Staff of the Crone. Ravenous, up to a 20% chance on lucky hit to increase your attack speed by 20% of your total movement speed. It sounds more confusing than it really is. In general, it's a chance proc to increase your attack speed yet again. Infection, hitting enemies with direct damage or slapping them with your claw is going to inflict pox. 8 stacks of this is going to basically deal a burst damage that's dealt as poison. Poison is going to have some synergy here, which goes in with their skill tree that we'll cover in just a bit. It's important to understand that 3 of these packs, if I recall correctly, are actually unlocked through the seasonal quest, not to be confused with the Blood Harvest. You will do the Blood Harvest as part of the seasonal quest, but you want to make sure that you're doing the actual quest line that you get in the journal. And there's actually a toggle button that you can hit that says seasonal quests only. So you make sure that you're on the right one, complete that chain as far as needed, and you'll unlock all these glyphs that are need be, as well as the other 2 that you get through the blood power. I've made the Paragon boards extremely simple, and I hope that this helps. In fact, if it does, feel free to leave a comment so I know to do more of them like this in the future. You'll essentially be a linear path progression, and you'll go off to grab the nodes that are selected, and you'll see all this information on D4 Build, so we don't need to cover everything node by node. What you need to know is go down to overturn and then go upwards. This will be the final points and the final levels that we get. So you continue along here, going up, grabbing everything along the way, and circling back. At this point, we'll come back to overturn. That's all you really need to know. The boards are in a specific order. That's where we can get the bonus effect. For example, 4% damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, 10% storm skill damage, 15% critical strike damage. The reason for this is, recall that our main stats are so low. That means that we just possibly cannot get everything that we want. We have to prioritize which board goes down, and that is to maximize the benefit of everything overall. So these are laid out to get the most benefit from everything, meaning we can still get things like poisoned enemy, bonus damage, and so forth. But some of the later ones, like down here, 4% healing received, we aren't able to get because we are not going to reach 620 intelligence with this particular build. So everything is laid out in an order with that mindset. The glyphs will be on D4 builds, and this is certainly something that'll be far easier to look at in that manner. The skill tree does have some flexibility, so you'll have a few points that you can place to your liking. Fierce Storm Strike will cause vulnerability, so we definitely want this particular one. We're going to have essentially 100% uptime on this as long as we're attacking, just because of how fast our attack speed is. Wild Claw will perform better than Fierce Claw, even though we do some poison damage and take some poison talents as well. Wild Claw will definitely be the go-to choice there. You do have flexibility at this point for your movement speed increase while in werewolf form. Reason for this is because we attack so fast and we heal, meaning if we stand there, even if we're taking damage and attack, we're regenning health. And if we move away without attacking, we can actually die. So experiment with this. This will depend a little bit on your particular character, your gear, and so forth. But in a lot of situations, you're better off just standing in the damage and healing through it. For Ancestral Fortitude, you could place 1 point if you're lucky enough to get your resistances high enough. However, you'll still want that 1 point so that you have access to Vigilance, and 3 points otherwise you want your resistances capped or as close to it. Down at the key passives, if you're using the Mighty Storms aspect, you'll want to go with Earthen Might. However, my particular build does not use that, in which case we take Lupine Ferocity, which is still a large DPS increase and gives you more flexibility on the individual aspects that you'll place in your gear, which again can be found on D4 builds. Other than that, Envenom is another place that you could place additional points. You'll get additional critical strike damage against poison enemies, and the enemies will be poisoned from some of the other talents you have and how fast you attack. For example, Toxic Claws, critical strikes with werewolf skills will deal base damage as poison damage, and we're just attacking so often, we're bound to get crits, which will then proc this and allow you to benefit from Envenom and so forth. That's it for the guide, and I appreciate you staying for the whole video to fully understand how important each piece of the build is to succeed. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and best of luck in Season 2.